What's up, guys? It's January 31st, 2017, and I'm going to cover the Q&A thread from today. Got a pretty good amount of questions today. I actually had to cut the thread off because I didn't want it to get too long. So going to go ahead and start on those. First one is, when prepping clients for a show, at any point, do you change protocol from the more conventional compound heavy lifting movements to more volume-based isolation movements to add detail? If so, at what point do you generally do this? Not really. I don't really switch over drastically. I like to keep compound movements in there, at least to some extent, just to maintain strength and muscle tissue. Getting weak during a prep is one thing that's pretty indicative of losing muscle. Ideally you're going to want to try to keep your strength up the best you can. It might not be pretty. You might lose some reps, might not be hitting any PRs. You might actually, you might lose some strength, which in the grand scheme of things isn't the end of the world. But if you can keep it as close as possible, that is good. So I would try to keep at least some kind of compound lifting in there. Now, I have gotten into situations where someone's just really, really beat up. I'm worried about injury. They're stage ready already at that point. Maybe they're a few weeks out or something. I might back it off. I might go to all machine work. I might try to keep them as safe as possible. I have had to take out compound lifting altogether just for those purposes, that these people that are really, really beat up, extremely lean, and can hardly, function very well doing compound lifting. I don't like to do that. I have done it. Now, as far as adding volume in, that could have some merit in, just burning calories. If I want to add in more exercise versus, or, more weight training versus just more cardio or less calories, that could have some merit. But I wouldn't necessarily drastically flip the other, and I wouldn't say that isolation movements are necessarily going to add detail. I'm probably going to have people doing a combination of both anyhow, and doing posing and stuff too, so make sure that they can actually fire all the fibers when they're flexing. When they're flexing their quads, can they flex all the heads that are visible on the surface? When they're flexing their when they're flexing their back, are they opening up? Are they pinching their scapulas? What are they doing? We can do a lot of getting the fine details come out through that. I don't think that doing anything through a prep is really going to do much in that regard. So I know that doesn't directly answer the question, but a few different answers there. So next question, what are the drawbacks from using higher insulin dosages over time? Okay, so there are a few drawbacks to that. The obvious one being, well, not the obvious one, the obvious side effect being, risk of going hypoglycemic. But assuming you're controlling that pretty well, there are some complications and possibly becoming insulin resistant. And I do see that a lot. I can see that in people's blood sugar, as simple as fasting blood sugar. And I can watch the fasting blood sugar slowly rise after repeated insulin use, and then they need to stop. So that is there. Definitely, no doubt about it. See it all the time. There's some literature that shows that repeated insulin use and repeated hyperinsulinemia, which would be just constant elevation of insulin, would cause insulin resistance. So I think the one study, and I pulled it up here, actually says the subjects that had insulin infusion showed a significant 15% lower ability to use glucose compared to those who did not receive insulin. And these were people that were repeatedly getting glucose. So it's not that we're going to sit there and, drink glucose solution or take glucose tablets or stuff all the time, but you have to assume that when you're using insulin, you're usually eating more carbohydrates or enough carbohydrates to sustain the insulin. So, you're basically putting yourself in a situation where you're going to become insulin resistant anyhow. So those would be my concerns with it. And then obviously the more you do it, the more chance that's going to happen, the faster it's going to happen, and the more often you're going to need to, cycle back off. And then also on that, we talked about this in the podcast too. The risks of chronically elevated insulin levels causing heart disease or actually being linked to heart conditions, cardiovascular disease. So I would get fasted insulin levels checked if you're concerned about that or you're using insulin often. Oh, geez. I'll skip this next one because we already answered it in there. Got some funny guys in here. If you had to pick a favorite singular source of protein, carbs, and fat, oh, what would it be? Jeez, I don't know. I think for protein, I would probably pick a grass-fed beef of some kind. Something like a 90-10 ground grass-fed beef. I like it, tastes good, has a ton of nutrients, still has some fat in it. Pretty good fatty acid profile, so I'd probably pick that. For carb, he says potato. I'd probably pick potato too. I just like, I like potatoes. I think has a good amount of, not a ton of nutrients in there. Not that any starchy carbs really gonna have a lot of nutrients in it. So, fat source, geez, man, I would probably say red palm oil, just because there's some things in that you can't really get anywhere else, or that are hard to get anywhere else, even through supplementation. So I'd probably pick that. Maybe coconut oil. And then next question, thoughts on open promises for someone's end result from a trainer and coaches, like promising pro cards, placings, and such. Okay, so you see what you see as a coach. So, if somebody has the potential, express that to them. If they really, really have it, tell them, make them conscious of it, make them alert of it, so they know what they're working towards. They know they're, I don't know what a good word for it is. They're aware of it, just so they are getting everything out of it that they can be, and they do reach their potential. But to actually say this is going to happen or this isn't going to happen, I absolutely would not do that, just because we're talking about a sport that is judged. Any judged sport, I wouldn't be, it's not something I would bet on. You can obviously bring the best, and you can bring something so good that you just almost can't be denied. And you can, make a prediction off of that, but I wouldn't be one to tell my clients, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. I'll tell you, hey, I'm going to get you in the best condition you've ever been in. We're going to try to balance that with fullness. And, we're going to present the best package on stage, make sure your posing is good, make sure that, if you're female, make sure you're working on other parts of your presentation, hair, makeup, all that stuff, everything's important. So, that's what you can say. And what you shouldn't say is open promises. Definitely not, in my opinion. But I know people do it to get clients, and I think it's, pretty poor tactic. Thoughts on using Bioperine to assist with other supplements, starting dosages, and what would be the best ways to use it? And sorry about all the beeps, my email will not stop going off. So that's what that is. Bioperine, yes, or Bioperine, however you want to pronounce it. Yes, you'll actually see it in a lot of supplements now. 5 to 10 milligrams is typically a dose. If you want to add it to something, you can buy it. It's basically black pepper extract. So you could buy that and you could use it if you wanted to enhance absorption. But like I said, you're going to see it. A lot of things that need enhanced, like curcumin, for example, is a great example. You'll see it in a lot of curcumin supplements simply because they do not absorb very well. But yes, it is useful in that regard. Is Jeff Said natty? I would say potentially. I mean, looking at him, it's definitely possible. I've seen some, I've seen people that good or better naturally. So yeah, could be. I don't know. I mean, as far as I know, he's an IFBB pro, I think. So, he doesn't have to be. There's really no reason for him to be, but he certainly could be. I wouldn't be extremely surprised if he was. I mean, heck, in person, he might only be like 160 pounds. I don't know. I have no idea. What you see in the photos, not necessarily, and, exactly what they look like in real life size-wise. So just kind of, maybe they're put together very well. Any certifications, websites, books you'd recommend for newer coaches who are looking to broaden their knowledge outside of university? I know that there are some decent certs out there that you can get. Precision Nutrition is a pretty good one. I know it's been kind of popular. There's some good books, good training systems you can read about, like Dr. Scott Stevenson's Fortitude Training book. That's a good one. Super Training, that's a little bit older book. It's still very good. There are some more holistic nutrition books that I don't have the names off the top of my head, things that I've read that just help understanding body systems and how to correct imbalances within body systems. You know, that stuff is also important. Functioning optimally is obviously going to lead to better results in the end of the day. And as far as websites go, I mean, any website that has a reputable authors, things that write, or, you know, people that are writing, is probably good. Maybe videos. I know it's so hard to filter sources. If you're trying to learn and they're teaching you new things that you might not fully understand, then you don't necessarily know, hey, man, they're right or they're wrong. So that's a tricky one. I get that, but you can search around and use your best judgment, like looking at sites that, you know, there are several sites that have articles continuously coming out. So any of those may be helpful. Look for references. Look for repeating information that, you know, you might see multiple credible people mention. That's maybe a good indication that it's, you know, that it's valid. So those would be my recommendations. And I think another thing that is going to become more and more prevalent is like mentorship. I know that I'm helping someone right now with a mentorship, and I've had a couple other people ask about it, and I know that a couple other people that I know are utilizing them from other coaches that are very reputable. So I think that that's something that will probably become more prevalent, just because coaching or learning the craft of application is just something that is more experience-based and more something you just have to have a knack for. You know, you have to have an eye for it, you have to have a knack for it. And it's hard to read a book and figure that out, or read an article and figure that out, when you can maybe work with a coach and get into situations and learn stuff situationally. So that would be my suggestions. I think that's all of them today, besides the funny one that I didn't answer, but no one's gonna know, hardly any of you in the video are gonna know who it is, so I'll leave that one out anyhow. But I think that covers it for today, guys. I really appreciate all the really good questions, and I will have another thread up probably next week, early next week, and we'll do another one. Thanks, guys.